Queen Lysera stood on the highest balcony of her crystal palace, looking down at the vast city of Aurora 9. The city shimmered under the twin suns, its towers made of crystal and metal reaching toward the sky like the fingers of giants. Floating platforms hovered above the streets, carrying ships and people moving with quiet purpose. Yet, despite the beauty and order of her empire, Lysera's heart was heavy. In her private chamber lay the sacred armor, broken into pieces. It had been passed down through generations of Celestian rulers, each shard containing the essence of her ancestors, their wisdom, courage, and strength. But after the battle with the rogue warlord Korath, the armor had been shattered. The metal was cracked, the energy circuits broken, and the ancient inscriptions that connected it to her family's legacy were barely visible. Lysera's fingers traced the jagged edges of a breastplate fragment. She felt a faint pulse, a whisper of her ancestors' presence, struggling to survive. She had worn this armor in many battles, and it had always protected her, guiding her with the knowledge of rulers past. Now, without it, she felt exposed, vulnerable. The sacred armor cannot be repaired by ordinary hands, she whispered to herself, her voice carrying both sorrow and resolve. It needs someone extraordinary. Her advisors had already given their opinions. Some said to commission the finest Celestian artisans to rebuild it. Others suggested creating a new armor from modern materials, ignoring the traditions entirely. But Lysera knew neither option would restore the armor's spirit. Its true power came from its history, from the lives and energy of the rulers who had worn it before her. Only someone who could understand that essence could truly mend it. So she issued a decree across the empire. Anyone capable of restoring the sacred armor would be welcomed into the empire's highest council. The message traveled across star systems, reaching distant planets and civilizations. Yet, weeks passed, and no one answered her call. Lysera's hope was fading. She had fought wars, negotiated peace, and faced betrayal. But nothing had tested her patience like this. Then, on a quiet morning, a strange message arrived through the Imperial communication network. It was not from a Celestian, or even from a known ally. The sender's signature was human, a species Lysera had only encountered in passing. Humans were considered fragile by most alien civilizations. They had no long history of interstellar conquest, no empire to rival the Celestians, no mastery of energy manipulation that Celestians prized so highly. Yet, here was one, offering to restore the sacred armor. Lysera's curiosity overpowered her skepticism. She ordered the human to be brought to her palace immediately. The human arrived in a small, simple spacecraft that had no ornamentation, no display of wealth or power. It landed on the crystal platform beside the palace with a soft hum. When the hatch opened, a young man stepped out. His brown hair was tousled, his clothes plain, and his eyes held a quiet determination. He was nothing like the skilled Celestians she was used to seeing in her courts. "My name is Evan," he said, bowing respectfully. "I received your message. I wish to restore your armor." "No." Lysera studied him carefully. "Do you understand what you are asking?" she asked. "The sacred armor is not a simple suit of metal. It contains the energy of my ancestors. It will test your mind, your patience, and your skill. If you fail, it may be destroyed, beyond repair." Evan nodded. "I understand. I do not come unprepared." The queen raised an eyebrow. "Then show me your work." She led him to the chamber where the armor lay. The fragments were arranged on a floating platform, each piece glowing faintly with residual energy. The inscriptions shimmered in the dim light, ancient symbols that pulsed with the heartbeat of generations. The air in the room felt heavy, as if the armor itself were watching, judging. Evan approached carefully, studying each fragment. He did not rush, did not touch the pieces immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes and placed his hands near the shards without touching them. A faint hum began to rise from the armor, resonating with the energy around him. Lysera's advisors murmured among themselves. None had ever seen this. "What is he doing?" whispered one courtier. "He is sensing the energy," another replied, eyes wide. But no human has ever been able to do that. Evan's lips moved slightly, as if speaking to someone unseen. Then he opened his eyes and smiled faintly. I can feel them, he said simply. Your ancestors are speaking. They are telling me how they were put together, how they were broken. I can restore them, but I must do it carefully. The armor is alive in its own way. If I force it, I will lose the connection. Lysera felt a flicker of hope. She had expected a human to fail, to misunderstand, to break the ancient legacy further. But here was one who listened, who respected the armor and its history. Then begin, she commanded. Evan set to work. First, he created a small energy field around the fragments, isolating them from the ambient energy of the palace. Then, using a combination of precise tools and his hands, he began aligning the shards according to their original design. The room filled with a soft glow as the fragments started to resonate together, almost like musical notes forming a chord. Hours passed. Lysera watched silently, fascinated. She had seen countless artisans work on the armor, and none had ever approached it with such care, such understanding. Evan did not treat the armor as metal alone. He treated it as a living legacy, and it seemed to respond. As evening approached, one of the breastplate fragments shifted slightly under Evan's guidance. A faint light traveled along its edges, reconnecting with the neighboring pieces. He whispered words she could not understand, and the light pulsed brighter. The advisors gasped. This is impossible, one of them muttered. Lysera remained silent, her eyes fixed on the human and the glowing fragments. She did not yet trust him completely, but she could not deny what she was witnessing. Something extraordinary was happening. By nightfall, Evan had restored nearly half of the armor. Each piece now shimmered with faint energy, the inscriptions glowing more clearly. He stepped back, exhausted, but composed. Your ancestors are cautious, he said, breathing heavily. They are testing me. They want to see if I respect their legacy, if I understand their purpose. I cannot rush the rest. Lysera nodded. She understood. The sacred armor was more than metal and energy. It was a test of patience, humility, and connection. She realized that the human before her, though ordinary in appearance, possessed qualities her people often overlooked: adaptability, empathy, and a mind willing to understand rather than dominate. I will give you what time you need, she said softly. But know this. If you fail, there will be no second chance. Evan bowed. I understand, Your Majesty. As the night deepened over Aurora IX, the palace was quiet, except for the soft hum of the armor and the faint footsteps of the human working tirelessly. Lysera remained on her balcony, gazing at the stars. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of hope. Perhaps the sacred armor would be restored, not by the finest Celestian artisans, but by this human who saw its soul, not just its metal. Somewhere among the distant stars, she thought, there are extraordinary beings waiting to be discovered, even in the most unassuming forms. And perhaps, just perhaps, humanity had a place in the legacy of her empire. The queen turned from the balcony and watched Evan as he continued his work, knowing that the future of the Celestian Empire and the fate of the sacred armor now rested in the hands of a human. And thus began a journey that would challenge traditions, test courage, and reveal that strength often comes from the most unexpected sources. The following morning, the palace was alive with quiet excitement. News of the human's success in restoring half of the sacred armor had spread quickly through the city. Courtiers whispered in astonishment, while scholars and artisans debated whether a human could truly understand the depth of Celestian craft. Even the guards, trained to see humans as weak, looked at Evan with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Queen Lysera watched from her throne room as the young human continued his work. She was fascinated by the calm precision with which he moved. Unlike her own people, who often relied on brute strength and rigid discipline, Evan approached the armor with careful observation and patience. Every fragment he touched seemed to respond, glowing faintly, as if acknowledging his respect. This human, one advisor muttered to another, He understands things we cannot. Lysera did not reply. She wanted to see for herself. Humans were considered fragile, incapable of mastering the energy currents that flowed through Celestian technology. Yet here was one, not only surviving but excelling, bridging the ancient wisdom of the armor with his own intuition. Evan worked silently for hours, occasionally pausing to close his eyes, sensing the armor's energy. Lysera finally approached him, her flowing robes brushing the polished floor. "You work well," she said. "But I must ask, how do you know what to do? How do you understand the armor's voice?" Evan opened his eyes slowly and smiled. "It is not a voice like yours or mine. It is a pattern of energy, a rhythm that carries memory. I have spent my life noticing patterns, learning how energy flows through materials, how forces connect. Your ancestors left their guidance here, in every shard. I simply listen." Lysera studied him, impressed. "Listening," she repeated softly. "That is not something my people value enough. We seek to control. You respect." He nodded. "Respect comes first. Without it, any attempt to restore the armor would fail. You cannot force the past to obey. You must work with it." The queen felt a strange sense of relief. Perhaps her gamble in trusting a human was not misplaced. Yet the armor still had half of its fragments to be restored, and its full power remained dormant. She knew the next step would test Evan more than any court or chamber could. "Tomorrow," she said, "you will come with me to the Forge of Eternity." Evan's brow furrowed slightly. "The Forge of Eternity?" "Yes," Lysera replied. "It is the only place capable of restoring the armor fully. It will test your skill, your patience, and your understanding of energy. Many artisans have tried and failed. None have returned successful." Evan's lips tightened in determination. "Then I will succeed where others could not." The following day, the queen led him through the palace gates to the outskirts of the city, where massive cliffs of crystal stretched high above a glowing canyon. Suspended above the canyon were enormous platforms, glowing faintly as they carried energy through the air. At the center stood the Forge of Eternity, a structure of blackened steel and crystalline veins. It pulsed with raw energy, a storm of heat and light contained within walls of unbreakable metal. Lysera's voice was calm but firm. "The forge will test you. It can melt metal, erase energy traces, and even disrupt consciousness. Only those who can sense energy and act with precision and respect can survive here. If you fail, the armor will be lost forever." Evan approached the forge, feeling the hum of energy against his skin. He had never experienced anything like it. The air was thick with power, crackling like a storm ready to strike. Yet he did not flinch. He took a deep breath and focused on the fragments of the armor, feeling the pulse of each piece and the rhythm of the ancestors' energy. The queen watched silently. "You are brave," she whispered to herself. "Or perhaps foolish. Only time will tell." Evan began by arranging the fragments in a circular pattern on a platform within the forge. Sparks flew as residual energy from the forge interacted with the armor, causing some pieces to vibrate violently. The human did not panic. Instead, he closed his eyes and extended his hands over the fragments. Slowly, he allowed his own energy to merge with the armor's energy, forming a bridge between the raw power of the forge and the ancient spirit embedded in the armor. Minutes turned into hours. The queen remained on a raised platform, observing every movement. She noticed how Evan would pause, sensing shifts in energy, whispering under his breath as if communicating with the armor. Sometimes, a fragment would glow brighter, a sign that the ancestors were responding to his careful touch. "Your Majesty," Evan said finally, "the armor is guiding me. It is telling me which pieces must be fused first. The order is not random, it is a sequence. Like a song." Lysera leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "A song?" He nodded. "Yes. Each piece vibrates in a certain way. If I follow the pattern, I can restore the energy fully. If I rush, I risk breaking the connection." The queen realized that the human had a skill her people had never possessed, a combination of intuition, patience, and deep observation. These were qualities humans had honed for survival in harsh, unpredictable worlds. They adapted, they observed, they learned quickly, and here, in the Forge of Eternity, that very adaptability was proving to be the key to restoring a legacy that had defeated the greatest Celestian artisans. Hours passed, and the forge's storm intensified. Plasma arcs shot through the air, and the platforms shook under the energy's force. Yet Evan moved calmly among the fragments, guiding them into alignment, merging the shards with precision. The armor began to resonate, a soft hum rising into a harmonious tone. Light flowed through the cracks, connecting the pieces as if they were never broken. Lysera felt a shiver run down her spine. The sacred armor, once shattered, was awakening. And the human before her, fragile, ordinary, unassuming, was making it whole again. Suddenly, a surge of energy erupted from the forge, knocking Evan off balance. He fell to his knees but quickly recovered, using the energy to fuel the connection instead of resisting it. The armor glowed brighter than ever, the energy patterns flowing perfectly. The forge's storm seemed to recognize his control, calming slightly as the human guided the energy with steady hands. Lysera gasped. "He is controlling it." "Yes, Your Majesty," one of her advisors whispered. "No human should be able to do this," Evan continued, sweat on his brow but determination in his eyes. He whispered to the armor again, guiding each piece into place, syncing its energy with the forge. Slowly, the fragments fused together. Metal repaired itself, inscriptions realigned, and energy circuits hummed in perfect harmony. Finally, he stepped back, exhausted but smiling. The sacred armor stood complete, glowing softly as if breathing. The ancestors' energy pulsed, alive and powerful once more. The forge's storm receded, leaving the chamber quiet except for the gentle hum of the restored armor. Lysera stepped forward, awe in her eyes. She approached the armor carefully, almost afraid to touch it. "It is whole," she said. "You have done what no Celestian could do." Evan bowed deeply. "It was not I alone. The armor guided me, Your Majesty. I only listened." The Queen studied him, seeing not just a human, but a being capable of understanding and respect, a mind willing to work with the past rather than against it. She realized that perhaps her people had been too rigid, too proud, too certain that only their ways could succeed. And here, in the hands of a human, the sacred armor had been restored. "You have proven yourself," Lysera said finally, her voice firm and commanding. "You are no longer a stranger in my empire. You will sit beside me as an equal, and your skill and wisdom will be honored." Evan looked at her, a mix of surprise and gratitude on his face. "I am honored, Your Majesty. But my work is not finished. There is still much to learn, and much to protect." Lysera smiled faintly. "Indeed. And together, we will face what comes next. For the armor is more than protection. It is a symbol. And symbols are only as strong as those who believe in them." As the sun set over Aurora IX, casting golden light across the crystal towers, the Queen and the human stood side by side, gazing at the horizon. The sacred armor had been restored, and with it, a new hope had been born, not only for the Celestian Empire, but for the unexpected hero who had shown that courage, patience, and understanding could transcend species, tradition, and expectation. And somewhere deep within the palace, the ancestors of the armor seemed to stir, their energy glowing brighter than ever, acknowledging the human who had listened, who had respected, and who had succeeded where countless others had failed. For Queen Lysera, the journey was only beginning. She knew that if a human could restore the sacred armor, perhaps he could also help her face the challenges yet to come, challenges that would test courage, loyalty, and the very spirit of her empire. And Evan, standing beside her, felt a quiet pride. He had come from a simple world, one far from the shining towers of Aurora 9. Yet here he was, part of a legacy far greater than he had ever imagined. The story of a human in a world of ancient power had begun, and the stars themselves seemed to watch, waiting for what would happen next. The restored armor gleamed under the morning sun, its light reflecting in sharp patterns across the walls of the Celestian palace. Queen Lysera's heart swelled with pride. Yet she knew that restoration alone was not enough. The sacred armor had power, but power without testing could be dangerous. The forge had revealed Evan's skill, but it had not prepared him for the true trial that awaited. "Evan," Lysera said, her voice firm yet calm. "The armor is restored, but it is incomplete until it is tested in battle. There is a trial we must face together, the Shadow's challenge." Evan tilted his head, listening carefully. "A trial?" "Yes," she replied. "A rogue warlord named Korath survived our last battle. He seeks revenge and wishes to destroy all symbols of my rule. If the armor cannot perform under pressure, it will be meaningless. I must know that both I and my people can rely on it." The young human nodded, his expression steady. "Then we will face him together." Lysera summoned the Celestian fleet. Hundreds of ships hovered above the palace, engines humming, weapons charged. The sky over Aurora 9 darkened as the fleet prepared to intercept Korath's forces, which had been detected near the outer system. Despite the overwhelming number of ships, the Queen felt a tension she had not experienced since the first battles of her reign. For this challenge was not only about numbers, but about trust. She needed to trust a human with the power that had guided Celestian leaders for centuries. Korath's ships appeared like black specks on the horizon, growing larger with every passing moment. The warlord's voice came over the communication network, taunting, cold, and commanding. "Lysera," he said, "you hide behind your shiny towers and your fragile human. Surrender the armor, or witness your empire fall." Lysera's grip on the restored armor's gauntlet tightened. "You have underestimated us, Korath. We do not yield." The first wave of Korath's attack descended. Plasma blasts streaked through the sky, colliding with Celestian shields in brilliant sparks. Lysera stepped onto the command deck, her restored armor glowing with power. Evan, at her side. The energy of the armor pulsed like a heartbeat, resonating with her own determination and with Evan's calm confidence. "Focus," she said quietly. "Let the armor guide you." Evan nodded. He had spent hours learning to feel the armor's energy. Now, under the stress of real battle, he extended his senses. He could feel the armor's pulse, its connection to the Queen, and the flow of energy through the surrounding environment. Unlike the Celestians, who often relied on rigid protocols and pre-planned maneuvers, Evan adapted to every moment, reacting instinctively while keeping the armor's energy balanced. The first wave of attacks crashed against Aurora 9. Lasers tore through shields, and debris floated through the city's skies. Lysera moved with precision, her restored armor guiding her movements, but it was Evan who made the difference. He could anticipate energy fluctuations in the armor, subtly adjusting its alignment to protect the Queen and amplify her strength. "You are remarkable," Lysera said under her breath as they maneuvered between a hail of plasma fire. "I did not expect a human to match centuries of Celestian training." Evan smiled faintly. "I am learning from the armor, Your Majesty. It teaches me." The Queen watched as Korath himself emerged in a massive ship, larger and more powerful than any before. It radiated destructive energy, a dark aura designed to disrupt Celestian technology. Even the best warriors would falter before such a force. Evan felt the armor tense. Its energy reacted to the looming threat, warning him of the danger, but also offering guidance. He whispered to it, coordinating with Lysera's movements. "We must use the armor's energy against him, not just defend." The Queen understood. "Then we strike together." With a nod, Evan and Lysera moved in unison. The sacred armor glowed brighter than ever, amplifying the Queen's speed and agility. Plasma beams deflected harmlessly off her shields, while Evan's guidance allowed her to exploit weaknesses in Korath's attacks. The human did not fight with brute force, but with intuition, observing patterns in the enemy's movements and channeling the armor's energy to counter them. For the first time in generations, the Celestian people saw that a human could match their skill. Citizens who had doubted Evan's presence now watched in awe as he guided their queen through the deadly battlefield. Korath, enraged by their resistance, unleashed his most powerful weapon, a massive energy pulse designed to disable all technology within a kilometer. The pulse surged forward, threatening to destroy the sacred armor entirely. Lazera braced for impact, but Evan acted instantly. He focused the armor's energy into a protective field, merging it with his own human intuition of force and motion. The pulse collided with the armor's shield, sending shockwaves through the air, yet the armor held. Lazera could feel the difference immediately. She moved with greater confidence, striking with precision as the enemy faltered. The battle raged on. Korath's fleet was skilled, but his soldiers were unprepared for the combination of Celestian might and human ingenuity. Evan directed the Queen's energy to critical points, enhancing her attacks without straining the armor. Slowly, wave by wave, they pushed Korath's forces back. Finally, Korath himself boarded the city, determined to end the fight personally. The Queen met him on the palace terrace, the sacred armor glowing in full power, Evan at her side. Korath laughed, thinking the human would be no threat. "You rely too much on this fragile creature," he sneered. "It will fail." Evan stepped forward, calm and steady. "Strength is not just in size or history," he said quietly. "It is in understanding, in courage, in working together." Korath attacked, swinging a plasma blade. Lazera moved with speed and precision, Evan guiding the armor's energy to deflect the strike. The clash sent sparks flying, energy pulsing around them. For a moment, it seemed impossible, two beings against a warlord of immense power. But then Evan observed a pattern in Korath's attacks, subtle flaws in his rhythm. "Now, Your Majesty," he whispered. "Strike." When he repeats the motion, Lazera followed the guidance. As Korath attacked again, she parried and countered with a precision strike. The sacred armor absorbed and redirected the energy, stunning Korath. Evan amplified the armor's response, creating a ripple of force that knocked the warlord off balance. In a final, coordinated effort, Lazera and Evan combined their movements. The Queen's sword, guided by the armor, connected perfectly with the energy field Evan created. Korath was thrown back, his weapon shattered, and his fleet, seeing their leader defeated, retreated into the stars. The silence that followed was profound. Aurora IX had survived. The sacred armor had not only endured, but had become a symbol of trust, courage, and the unexpected strength of humanity. Lazera looked at Evan, pride and gratitude in her eyes. "You have proven yourself," she said, her voice calm but full of emotion. "You did not merely restore the armor. You gave it life. You saved my people and our legacy." Evan shook his head. "It was not just me, Your Majesty. The armor itself guided us. And you, for trusting me, gave me the chance to help." Lazera smiled, understanding more than words could express. For the first time, she saw a truth that her empire had overlooked for centuries. Strength was not confined to heritage or tradition. It could come from courage, intelligence, and the willingness to learn and adapt. As the city celebrated, Lazera and Evan stood on the terrace, looking at the stars that stretched above Aurora IX. The sacred armor gleamed, more alive than ever, and the human who had restored it was no longer an outsider but a hero, a partner, and a symbol of hope for the future. Somewhere in the distance, the remnants of Korath's fleet fled, but Lazera knew the threat was not entirely gone. Yet she also knew that with a human at her side, she could face challenges that no one had imagined before. The Queen placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "The battle is won, but our journey has only begun." Evan nodded, his gaze steady on the horizon. "Then let us face it together." And so, amidst the light of a setting sun and the glow of restored power, a human and a queen stood side by side, ready to meet the challenges of a universe that had underestimated them both. For strength, courage, and ingenuity could be found in the most unexpected forms, and sometimes, that was all it took to change the fate of an empire. The city of Aurora 9 slowly returned to its usual rhythm after the fierce battle. The streets, once filled with the chaos of war, now echoed with the quiet hum of repair drones and citizens working together to rebuild. Despite the calm, Queen Lysera knew that the danger had not fully passed. Korath's forces had fled, but his desire for vengeance remained. The rogue warlord would return, and when he did, he would be more cunning, more prepared, and more dangerous. In the quiet of her private chamber, Lysera looked at the sacred armor, now fully restored and glowing with the power of generations. Evan stood beside her, examining the armor with careful attention. Though he had already proven himself, the queen knew that the next challenge would test both of them in ways the forge and the first battle had not. "You have done well, Evan," Lysera said softly, "but the armor has one final test. Korath will return, and he will not fight as he did before. He will attempt to disrupt our bond, to break the connection between you and the armor. Are you prepared?" Evan nodded, his expression steady. "I have learned from the armor, Your Majesty. I will face whatever comes." Lysera studied him. Humans were often underestimated, seen as fragile or unremarkable by other civilizations, yet here was one who had restored the sacred armor, guided her in battle, and now stood ready to face a returning threat. She realized that adaptability, courage, and intuition were strengths that could rival centuries of tradition. The next morning, the warning alarms sounded across the city. Sensors detected Korath's fleet, returning from the outer systems, larger and more organized than before. His ships moved with precision, carrying new weapons designed to counter Celestian technology. The Queen and Evan prepared for the challenge, knowing that the stakes were higher than ever. On the command deck, Lysera watched the enemy fleet approach. "We cannot rely on shields alone," she said. "We must use the armor's power strategically. Evan, can you coordinate with me to channel the energy through the fleet?" Evan's hands hovered over the armor's controls, feeling the pulse of its energy. "Yes, Your Majesty. I can guide the armor's energy to strengthen our defenses and enhance your attacks, but we must remain calm and focused. Korath will try to exploit any mistake." The first wave of Korath's new attack began. Swarms of agile ships darted forward, firing plasma projectiles designed to bypass conventional shields. Evan quickly analyzed their patterns, noticing subtle rhythms in their movements. "Your Majesty," he said, "aim for the weak points between their formations. The armor will amplify your strikes if you time them with the energy pulse I create." Lysera followed his instructions, moving with precision as the armor's energy glowed brighter with each coordinated attack. The enemy ships faltered under the combined power, some exploding in brilliant flashes of light. Yet Korath himself remained unseen, likely observing and planning his next move. Hours passed as the battle intensified. The Queen and Evan worked seamlessly, a combination of Celestian skill and human intuition guiding every move. The citizens of Aurora 9 watched from safe observation platforms, marveling at the harmony between the Queen and the human who had restored the sacred armor. Suddenly, a massive energy wave struck the city, disrupting sensors and shields. Korath had unleashed his most dangerous weapon, yet a pulse designed to scramble energy fields and weaken the sacred armor's connection. Lysera felt the familiar hum of the armor falter, and fear briefly gripped her heart. "Focus, Evan," she said urgently. "Can you stabilize it?" Evan closed his eyes, feeling the armor's pulse. He could sense its connection to Lysera, its bond with the ancestors, and the intrusion from Korath's weapon. Carefully, he extended his energy through the armor, creating a counterpulse that aligned with the armor's rhythm. The light of the armor flared brilliantly, absorbing the enemy wave and converting it into energy that strengthened their shields. "It is working," Lysera exclaimed. "Keep it steady." Evan concentrated, his hands moving in subtle patterns, guiding the armor's energy with precise focus. Slowly, the connection between him and the armor grew stronger, stabilizing the Queen's defenses and enhancing her attacks. Korath's fleet, once confident, began to falter under the unexpected resilience. Seeing an opportunity, Lysera moved forward with calculated precision. The sacred armor amplified her speed and strength, allowing her to strike enemy ships with devastating efficiency. Evan guided her movements, predicting energy surges and weaknesses in the enemy's formation. Together, they created a synchronized force that the enemy could not counter. Korath realized his mistake and decided to confront them personally. He boarded the palace in a sleek assault craft, attempting to strike directly at the queen. Lysera and Evan anticipated his arrival. The sacred armor glowed intensely as Evan merged his energy with it, creating a protective field that surrounded the queen. "You are persistent, Korath," Lysera said as he landed, his weapon raised. "But you have underestimated the bond between human and armor." Korath lunged, but Evan anticipated the motion. He guided the armor's energy to amplify the queen's movements, allowing her to dodge and counter with precision. Sparks flew as weapons clashed, and energy rippled through the palace terrace. The queen's strikes were sharp and accurate, enhanced by Evan's subtle guidance. Korath's attacks grew more aggressive, but each was met with perfect timing and coordination. Evan's human intuition allowed him to predict patterns that centuries of Celestian training alone could not. The queen felt the difference immediately, moving with confidence and strength she had never known before. Finally, with one combined effort, Lysera and Evan struck in unison. The sacred armor released a surge of energy that incapacitated Korath, leaving him disarmed and defeated. His fleet, witnessing their leader's failure, retreated quickly into the stars. Silence fell over the palace. The citizens cheered, their relief and admiration for both the queen and the human evident in their voices. Lysera looked at Evan, her expression a mixture of pride and gratitude. "You have done it," she said softly. "You have faced the Shadow's challenge and proven your worth. The armor, the city, and the empire owe you their survival." Evan shook his head, humble but resolute. "It was not only my effort. The armor guided us, and you trusted me. Together, we succeeded." Lysera smiled. For the first time, she truly understood the potential of humanity. Humans, often overlooked, could rise to greatness through courage, adaptability, and respect for the unknown. Evan had proven that strength was not limited to lineage or tradition, but could be found in the willingness to learn, to observe, and to work with forces beyond one's understanding. The sacred armor continued to glow softly, a reminder of the bond between the queen and the human who had restored it. Citizens began repairing the city with renewed energy, inspired by the unity and courage they had witnessed. The queen and Evan stood together, watching the sunset over Aurora 9's, their silhouettes framed by the crystal towers that had survived the battle. Lysera placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "The Empire has learned a valuable lesson today. Strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the most unexpected allies are the ones who shape our destiny." Evan nodded. "Then we will face the future together, Your Majesty. Whatever comes, we are ready." As night fell, the stars of Aurora 9 twinkled above, reflecting the renewed hope of the Empire. The sacred armor's energy pulsed in rhythm with the city, a symbol of courage, ingenuity, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. Lysera knew that challenges would continue to arise, but with Evan by her side, she felt certain that the Celestian Empire could face whatever the universe had in store. And in that moment, the bond between a queen and a human was sealed. A partnership that would redefine the Empire's understanding of strength, loyalty, and heroism. The Shadow's challenge had been met. The armor had been tested, and the human who had once been a stranger now stood as a hero, an equal, and a symbol of a brighter, stronger future. The twin suns of Aurora IX rose slowly over the city, bathing the crystal towers in golden light. After the decisive victory against Korath, the Empire was finally at peace. At least for now. The streets were alive with citizens celebrating the survival of their city, the Queen, and the sacred armor. Repairs continued on, buildings damaged in the recent battles. But hope and excitement filled the air. Queen Lysera stood on the highest balcony of her palace, the restored sacred armor gleaming in the morning light. The armor now carried more than just the energy of her ancestors, it also bore the proof of a human's courage and skill. Evan stood beside her, calm and steady, as he had been throughout every trial. "You have done more than restore my armor," Lazara said quietly. "Evan, you have restored faith in our people and shown me a truth I could not see before." Evan bowed slightly. "I only did what I could, Your Majesty. The armor guided me, and you trusted me. That made all the difference." Lazara smiled faintly. She realized that the sacred armor had always been more than a weapon. It was a symbol of leadership, courage, and unity. And now, thanks to a human's ingenuity and adaptability, that symbol had become stronger than ever. News of Evan's deeds had spread throughout the Empire and beyond. Humans, once considered fragile and insignificant, were now being recognized as beings of potential and skill. Scholars debated his methods, artisans studied his techniques, and citizens told tales of the human who had saved their queen. The Empire began to see a new future, one where humans could be allies, innovators, and heroes. Lazara called a council meeting to formally recognize Evan's contribution. The council chambers were filled with high-ranking Celestians, advisors, and citizens who had witnessed the battles. The Queen's voice was steady as she addressed them all. "Today, we honor not only the restoration of the sacred armor, but the courage and skill of a being once underestimated," she said. "Evan has shown that strength does not come only from heritage, tradition, or lineage. It comes from understanding, adaptability, and the willingness to rise to the challenge." The chamber erupted in applause. Some Celestians were hesitant at first, still unaccustomed to honoring a human, but even they could not deny his accomplishments. Evan stepped forward, bowing respectfully to the Queen. "I am honored to serve, Your Majesty," he said. "But the credit belongs to all who have guided and protected this empire. I only did my part." Lazara placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of trust and recognition. "Your part was extraordinary. You have proven that humans can be more than what we once believed. You are now a valued ally and a symbol of what our empire can achieve when we embrace unexpected strengths." The council formally granted Evan a title, Protector of the Sacred Legacy. It was a rare honor, previously reserved only for the most distinguished Celestians. Yet in granting it to a human, Lazara sent a message across the galaxy. Greatness was not limited by species, and courage could come from anywhere. With recognition came responsibility. Korath's defeat had not eliminated all threats. There were other rogue warlords, rival empires, and dangers lurking in the outer systems. Lazara and Evan began planning a new defense strategy for Aurora 9, combining Celestian military strength with human ingenuity. Evan suggested tactics based on observation, adaptability, and anticipation, complementing the Empire's traditional methods. "Humans have a way of seeing patterns others overlook," Evan explained. "We notice weaknesses, timing, and opportunities in ways that rigid systems often miss. If we combine that with the Empire's power, we can face any challenge." Lazara nodded. "Then we will train our fleets together, humans and Celestians, learning from each other. Our future will not be limited by old assumptions." In the following weeks, Aurora IX became a hub of innovation. Human advisors, inspired by Evan's success, began working alongside Celestian engineers and scholars. They shared knowledge of survival strategies, energy manipulation, and adaptive thinking. The Empire grew stronger, not only in weapons and technology but in perspective. Meanwhile, Evan continued his work with the sacred armor. He discovered new ways to harmonize its energy with the Queen's commands, enhancing both her strength and her instincts. The armor had become more than protection, it was a partnership, a living legacy that responded to both Queen and human, combining centuries of wisdom with human intuition. One evening, after a long day of strategy meetings and training, Lazara and Evan walked together through the palace gardens. The crystal fountains reflected the light of the setting sun, casting sparkling patterns on the marble paths. "You have changed more than just the armor," Lazara said softly. "You have changed how I see the universe, and how I see my empire." Evan smiled. "Perhaps the universe is teaching us, Your Majesty, that strength is not just in the past, or in power alone, but in how we choose to face the future." Lysera paused, thinking about the battles, the forge, and the trials they had faced. She realized that humans, adaptable and intuitive, had qualities her people had overlooked for centuries. Courage and skill could take many forms. Tradition and lineage were valuable, but openness and understanding were equally powerful. The queen reached out and touched the armor lightly. Its glow reflected the stars above. "This armor has seen centuries of rulers," she said, "and now it carries the proof that greatness can come from the most unexpected places." Evan looked at her, pride and humility in his eyes. "I only did what I could. The armor guided me, and you trusted me. That made all the difference." Together, they gazed at the horizon, knowing that challenges would continue to arise. But for the first time, Lysera felt confident that the Celestian Empire could face whatever came, because they had learned a new truth. Courage, wisdom, and ingenuity could come from anyone, anywhere, even from a human once considered fragile and unremarkable. The citizens of Aurora 9 celebrated, not only for their victory but for the hope of a stronger, more united future. Stories of the human who restored the sacred armor and saved the Empire spread across the galaxy, inspiring countless others to believe that no matter how ordinary one might seem, greatness could be achieved through courage, perseverance, and understanding. In the days that followed, alliances were formed with other civilizations who had once doubted humans. The Celestian Empire began to thrive in ways it never had before. Learning from diversity, innovation, and unexpected strength, Evan's presence became a symbol of possibility, a reminder that the universe held opportunities that could only be seized by those willing to rise to the challenge. And in the quiet of the palace at night, Queen Lysera and Evan stood together, watching the stars above. The sacred armor pulsed softly, a living testament to the bond between a queen and a human, a symbol of the past, present, and future of the Empire. "We have accomplished much," Lysera said, "but the journey is not over." "No," Evan agreed. "But together, we can face whatever comes. The future is ours to shape." Lysera nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. For the first time, she realized that the true strength of an empire was not just in its armies, its technology, or its traditions. It was in the people, their courage, and the bonds they formed across worlds. And so, Aurora IX entered a new era. A human had restored the sacred armor, saved the empire, and shown that greatness knows no boundaries. The queen and the human stood as partners, ready to face the stars, knowing that the universe was full of challenges and full of opportunities for those bold enough to embrace them. In the hearts of the Celestians, a lesson had been learned. Strength is not confined to the expected. It can come from the most unexpected places, and when it does, it has the power to change the course of history forever. The sacred armor shimmered in the twilight, a beacon of hope, courage, and unity, and standing beside it, a queen and a human gazed toward the horizon, knowing that together they had created a future worth fighting for and worth believing in.